The inaugural season for the Valkyries has been a success already. I think we can all agree. The winningest expansion team in WNBA history, and here they are in the playoffs. And I think that, when you look at this season, the things that they have done so positively, one, I've already stated they hired Natalie Nakase, and how good of a coach she is and how well she's established a culture and a system and in the front office and the powers that be for the Valkyries, understanding, hey, the international influence, going and getting the three French girls, Ceci Zendalasini, right? And I think that combined with pinpointing Veronica Burton as the head of the Snake. So the roster construction was very impressive, right? I think that they also had a little advantage of just being the underdogs initially, maybe teams not taking them as seriously. But the culture and identity that Nakase has built is, we're tough, we're going to play harder than you. And then, of course, taking advantage of the analytics and shooting so many threes, where early on it was kind of rough, right? The first 10 to 15 games, it was like, do we have the personnel to shoot these many threes? But eventually, the analytics started to pan out, right? And they started to win games maybe they shouldn't have. But I think part of what happened was the identity of hustle, toughness, physicality, playing harder. And on a given night throughout this season, the Valkyries played harder than the opponent. And that led to winning more games than they were expected to. But here we are at the end of the season, and I think that they've paid a cost for that. Can you do that, right? These true contenders who go deep into the playoffs each season understand, hey, we've got to pace ourselves a little bit through the regular season in order to have enough left in the tank for a playoff run. And the Valkyries obviously didn't have that luxury. So you understand why they played the way they played. But here we are at the end of the regular season, and you feel like there's not much left in the tank. Specifically when you talk about Veronica Burton, right? Tip Hayes looks like her season is over. Ceci, is she going to be in shape by the time it matters, which is Sunday? Doesn't really seem like it. And so they head into this final game in Minnesota with the scenario that if you win, then you bump up to, is it the 6th seed? And you see the Atlanta Dream. If you lose, you go all the way down to the 8th seed and you stay in Minnesota to play this Lynx team in the first round, the matchup that everyone wanted to avoid. And some thought maybe, hey, Minnesota has everything locked up. Maybe they'll rest their starters and stuff like that. No, that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. One, I think that they wanted to get into playoff mode, right? They've set a regular season wins record, but I think that they also wanted the Valkyries in this first round matchup as opposed to a veteran Seattle Storm team that had beat them a few times in the regular season. So the Lynx were incentivized to play their players, and that they did. I think that right away you could see the playoff intensity and the defense from this number one defense in Minnesota sped everybody up. We missed our first 14 three-pointers, and everyone's shot was sped up. Everyone's rhythm was sped up. You see it all the time in the NBA, right? I don't think it's as glaring in the NBA because they play so fast, where in the W, where the women tend to play more patient and wait for better shots, it was glaring last night. It was like, oh, this is the playoffs. Welcome to the playoffs. It was a little, it was spooky. So we missed our first 14 threes, but the defense kept them alive, right? As ugly as it looked, it was like, oh, it's only 9, it's only 10. And then they cut it down to like 4 or 5 a couple times. But I think that Minnesota not only wanted the Valkyries in the first round, but also sent a message to this young Valkyries team like, hey, there's levels to this, and you don't have any hope against us. And I think they, for the most part, delivered that message. Ileana Rupert goes down, rolls the left ankle early in the fourth quarter. And, I'm sure she'll tape it up and try to play. And when you look at this matchup here starting Sunday, the hope is, all right, you got to make more threes, clearly, right? But here's the thing. If you watched the game last night, it wasn't like they were just missing open threes. The defense made the Valkyries miss those threes. They were highly contested. They were uncomfortable. They were sped up. It wasn't just like, oh, an off night shooting. No, I think you have to credit the Lynx defense for why they missed so many of those threes. And so, when you look at it that way, it's kind of hard to see them shooting the three well in a playoff series against this defense. So how do you negate that? Well, you say, all right, well, you got to push the pace. You can't let this defense set up with all their length and all their IQ. But the problem is that's not the Valkyrie style this year, right? They want to walk the ball up. They want to limit the possessions and then take threes. And stylistically, that's not going to work against this Lynx team. You know what it kind of reminds me of is year 2 of Durant in Golden State. The Warriors in the first round drew a Clippers team that really was not supposed to be in the playoffs. They were the 8th seed. Obviously, the Warriors were the 1 seed, right? And you had Lou Will, Montrezl Harrell, a rookie SGA, right? This was just a Clippers team that was just like, oh, they made the playoffs, right? And somehow they stole one off of that vaunted KD Warriors team, and I think that would be the hope for this Valkyries team, is if they could get one, if they could get the one back in San Jose, not in San Francisco, right? If they could get that one, I think that would be really cool, special, and shocking, to be frank, right? And so the Lynx, I'm going to go through my picks here and tell you how I think that these playoffs are going to play out. But I think that it goes without saying, obviously, the Lynx are going to take out this young Valkyries team. It's been fun. It's been a good season and a successful season in establishing a culture, establishing some franchise pillars, right? But you run into a juggernaut of the Lynx where I don't think anybody's going to beat them. I think they've got the chip on their shoulder from getting screwed in last year's finals in New York. Fee 50, 40, 90. Heidemann is on fire, right? You bring in Carrington, who, she's at the left shoulder. She's going to be ready to go. And barring any type of significant injury, the Lynx have to be the heavy favorite to win the WNBA title this year. Now, before I go and give you my picks and how I think that these playoffs are going to play out, Prize Picks. You can use the code Alchemy right now. Play $5 and get $50 instantly on any lineup. It's simple to play. You pick 2 to 6 players, predict more or less in their projected stats, and you cash in if your picks hit. You can also scan my QR code. You got the big fights this weekend. Obviously, NFL's in play. And for those of you new to the channel and those of you that are watching these W videos, and I've had, several comments like, oh man, I really respect that you're doing it. Obviously, it's not for the views. Hopefully one day it will be, but the best way to support me right now for making these videos would be to sign up with my code or scanning the QR code and play Prize Picks. All right, let's jump into these playoff brackets. You've got the 4-5 matchup, Phoenix Mercury versus the New York Liberty. I think the Phoenix Mercury are way more physical than the Liberty. And I think that they're just tougher. I think they defend better. And to be frank, I think we can all see, just like I think everyone has a feeling like this is the Lynx year. Everyone could tell about midway through and Stewie goes down, like Jonquel's in it, like this isn't the Liberty's year to go back to back, whether it's just finals fatigue from 2 straight. And I think that they're going to have to, reevaluate their roster, perhaps get some more mobile bigs that can defend out in space. But Phoenix has multiple bodies to throw at Stewie. When you look at Mac, Satu, and even AT, I think could hold up. It's against Stewie, to the somewhat, I'll say. But I think the only chance for the Liberty here is to get really hot from 3. They're going to need a huge series from Sabrina, and maybe Jonquel is fully capable of hitting 5, 6 threes in a game, and then that Barclays Center whistle, always helps. So I've got Phoenix in 5. I think that the Liberty will, they're going to win a game or 2 here, but ultimately I like the Mercury's toughness. They've got the veteran experience. They're just a better team this year, clearly, and playing better at the moment. And so in the second round on that side of the bracket, it would match up the Lynx, who I'm assuming are going to sweep us, right, against this Phoenix Mercury team where, look, Phoenix, they're certainly not going to get swept by the Lynx. I think it will be a longer series, but I think that ultimately, defensively, Minnesota is going to give Ka Copper and Satu problems, right? You talk about the big 3 in Phoenix with AT, Satu, and Ka Copper. I think that, when you look at Carlson and Fee and just Carrington, like I just think that they're going to be able to stay home defensively and force AT to have to score more than she wants to. And so I have the Lynx coming out of that side of the bracket into the finals. Moving over to the other side of the bracket, you've got the Aces versus the Storm. And the Aces, what have they won? 16 in a row. I mean, you could make the argument that you'd rather face the Lynx right now than the Aces. I won't make that argument, but I wouldn't be mad at it either, right? But so look, the Storm are a prideful veteran team. Maybe they may not have the best chemistry or finishing ability as we've seen. They finished the Valkyrie, and that game was so big, man. So I don't think they'll get swept by the Aces. I think they'll get one game, but ultimately Skylar Diggins will probably unravel, right? Dominique Malonga, as impressive as she's been, this will be her first playoff series against, Asia in the physicality of the Aces. That could look ugly. And then you look at Nneka, she's not going to be able to dominate at the nail against Asia in this Aces physicality. And then when I watch her shoot the three, she just doesn't get enough lift on her three. I don't think she shoots the three well enough to be, she's going to have an inefficient series. And so I got the Aces beating the Storm in 4 games, right? And then you've got the Dream versus the Fever. That's going to be a sweep, right? The Fever, they're just, injury ridden. And it's, Kelsey Mitchell, maybe she can drop a 50 ball and keep them in it. But I've got the Dream pretty much easily getting past this injured Fever's team. And so now you've got Atlanta versus the Aces, the Las Vegas Aces, in the second round of that side of the bracket. That's maybe the most intriguing early matchup where if Alicia Gray's healthy, they could beat the Aces. I think it's an intriguing matchup. They match up well when you look at the size of Jones and Griner protecting the rim against Asia, forcing Asia out, but she's been making threes. Can we all agree Asia's the MVP? As impressive as the 50-40-90 season has been from Fee, Asia's the MVP. But the Dream have that size to kind of push her out of the paint. And so I'm still going to go Aces, just off how hot they are right now. And there are some injury questions, how healthy this Atlanta team is. Jackie Young, Ryan Howard matchup would be fun. And so now you've got, coming out of one side of the bracket, the Las Vegas Aces versus the Minnesota Lynx on the other side. And that's a hell of a finals. I think the W would love that matchup as far as competitiveness and everything. And again, along the way, how healthy are these teams? I'm assuming that these teams get there pretty much healthy, relatively healthy. What I'll say is, and why I favor the Lynx, is because, one, it feels like they're a team of destiny. I think that the 16 in a row that the Aces have gone on, the second half of the season push that the Aces have made, I think eventually is going to catch up with them as far as just gas in the tank, energy, right? I think once they finally get there and having probably a tough matchup with the Dream, they're not going to have as much in the tank left as this Minnesota team that is, again, destined to win the championship. So I've got the Minnesota Lynx winning their 6th? Is it their 5th or their 6th WNBA finals? Yeah, that's how I see it. But again, stay tuned. I'll have more prize picks as the Niners season already over? Really? Mac Jones, are we about to do this again with the quarterback thing? We already paid Brock. Anyway, I digress. That's not for this video here. But yeah, link in the description. Great way to support the channel. Valkyries, it's been a fun ride. It really has. You wish that they would have matched up in the first round with just a more competitive matchup where they could have got more of a taste of the playoffs. But it feels like this is going to be over quickly and ugly for the Valkyries. If they can steal one, I'll be super impressed. And I'll probably do a end of the season Valkyrie video as far as the roster moving forward and what to look for with that. And then training camps on the way. I know some of you are impatient and want Warriors coverage. What can I say? They ain't done nothing. Is Kuminga holding us hostage right now? But obviously the Warriors content's going to start to trickle in as guys arrive to training camp and we figure out what this roster actually is. Crawford's going to win. Y'all enjoy the weekend. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.